I'm going to be straight with you. For 30 days, I lived like I was incarcerated, and I needed to. Not because I broke the law, but because I'd completely lost control of my own head. I woke up one morning and realized my life was essentially just scrolling and waiting for 7 p.m. so I could pour a glass of wine. My inner world was chaos. I had to build a mental prison just to escape the real, invisible one I'd built for myself over years of procrastination and weak decision-making. Look, if you're tired of the constant mental chatter, if you feel like you re-waiting for the weekend just to recover from the week you barely survived, then stick around. This isn't a motivational speech. This is the literal blueprint for getting your mental freedom back in 30 days. This whole process sounds extreme, I get it. But extreme problems require radical solutions. If you like the sound of cutting through the nonsense and building a brain you can actually rely on, hit that subscribe button. We talk about this stuff every week. But first, we have to talk about how bad things actually were. I wasn't clinically depressed, but I was numb. My productivity was a joke. I was averaging 6 hours a day staring at screens that didn't matter, and my internal monologue was cruel. I was spiritually flabby. I was the captain of the SS Mediocrity. So, prison mode started with 4 simple, brutal directives. Rule number 1, no snooze, no negotiation. I had to be up, feet on the floor at 5:30 a.m. 6 days a week. It didn't matter if I went to bed at midnight or 9 p.m. 5:30 meant 5:30. Brutal, but effective. Rule number 2 was maybe harder. 0 cheap dopamine spikes before 9 a.m. No phone check. No emails, no news. No coffee immediately. The first 90 minutes of my day had to be spent consuming friction, not entertainment. I had to earn that scroll and earn that caffeine. This meant journaling, lifting, or reading a really dense book. Not the kind of light reading you do on a plane. I'm talking about something you actually have to think about. Rule number 3 was about physical exhaustion. I had to force myself into a state of physical discomfort at least twice a day, every day, even if it was just a freezing shower or a run when it was pouring rain. You can't feel sorry for yourself when you're slightly miserable all the time, ironically. But here's the layer that broke me, the rule I almost cheated on every single day for the first week. It forced me to look at my deepest dependencies, and it was so painful, I had to physically tape it to my bathroom mirror just to stop myself from walking over and cheating. This was rule number 4. Absolute restriction on the one thing I used to numb all my feelings. It wasn't alcohol, actually. It was far more insidious. Segment ends. So the rules I set were brutal, because they had to be. This wasn't about optimization, it was about amputation. No phone in the bedroom ever. 0 exceptions for alcohol or any kind of sugary escape. I had to move my body for 45 minutes every day, period, even if it was just pacing in the apartment during a storm. But the real torture was the hard ban on input. No mindless YouTube, no scrolling Twitter just for a minute. That was the dopamine artery I was severing. And honestly, day 3 felt like a full-blown physical illness. Not just tired, but actual pounding headaches. My brain was screaming, literally bargaining with me. Just check the news. Just look up that one thing. It's the sheer force of habit, the automatic reach for the device that reveals the depth of the addiction. You realize you weren't just using the phone for information. You were using it to self-medicate minor discomfort. That's when I understood something critical. The true enemy wasn't laziness. The enemy was boredom. We talk endlessly about discipline, but nobody prepares you for the sheer, raw, horrible emptiness of removing your distractions. When the noise stops, the internal chaos starts. And that chaos is where all your suppressed anxiety, all your unfinished thoughts, and all your old traumas live. You have to sit with them. You have to endure the discomfort of being entirely alone with your own mind. If you've ever tried to implement a real, hard change and felt that unbearable pullback toward comfort and numbness, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That struggle right there, that friction, is the sign you're doing it right. If these stories about fighting the mental inertia resonate, and you want to keep seeing the imperfect, real attempts at self-improvement, maybe consider hitting that button below. It helps. I survived the first week by basically just putting one foot in front of the other. But the reward wasn't immediate productivity. The reward was something far more subtle. A side effect I started calling the clarity tax. It wasn't about doing more things. It was about seeing everything more sharply, and that included the flaws in my relationships and my career trajectory. That shift was uncomfortable, almost painful, and it's the centerpiece of what happens next. But before we get there, you need to hear about the 2 specific mental cheats I used to stop myself from completely giving up on day 10. They have nothing to do with meditation or cold showers. They're much uglier. You know how everyone talks about the momentum phase? The sweet spot where the routine clicks and everything's flowing. That's a lie. Or at least it only lasts about 10 days. Around day 18, the novelty just died. I woke up, looked at the journal entry for the day, meditate, write 500 words, train, and the only thought I had was, this is stupid. I'm doing this purely because I said I would. It stopped feeling like progress and started feeling like labor. Pure, boring, repetitive labor. And that is the secret they never tell you about sustained change. It has to be boring first. If you rely on excitement, you've already lost. I had to kill the idea of motivation. Motivation is useless. It's an emotion. You cannot build a durable life on an emotion. It's too volatile. What I needed was ritual, not romance. So I shifted the goal entirely. I stopped aiming for the perfect workout or the genius writing session. I stopped measuring the output. I aimed instead for minimum viable adherence. 5 awkward push-ups counts. 10 minutes of messy notes counts. The only true measure of success was not missing the day. 0 was the failure state, not 5 push-ups. This radical lowering of the bar is what saved the entire 30 days. But this is the wild part. When you remove all the buffers, the no mindless scrolling rule, the late night sugar fixes, all the external noise, you get incredibly quiet with your own brain. And my brain was loud. Really loud. I found myself thinking about things I hadn't processed in years. Little anxieties, weird resentments about old jobs, just floating up because I didn't give myself the instantaneous digital chance to numb out. The prison mode wasn't just about productivity, it became an accidental, forced therapy session. It exposed the noise I was trying to run away from. This pain, this profound psychological friction, is the unavoidable price tag of structure. But what exactly was the actual return on investment? What did 30 days of forced, awkward introspection actually do to the physical structure of my life and the mental structure of my days? Because the biggest change wasn't the hours I got back. It was something else entirely. Something I had to write down on day 30 just to actually believe it. And that's the final piece, the system I used to lock in those wins so I did crash on day 31 and go back to 0. That's coming up next. So I hit day 30, the actual feeling, not triumph. It was relief, bordering on exhaustion, because all that structure, all that self-control, it felt like I'd been holding a breath for a month. And the second that countdown hit 0, I just deflated. The thing is, nobody talks about day 31. I went straight back to old habits. Not totally, but I ordered pizza. I watched 4 hours of trash TV. I didn't meditate. I tanked the whole day because my brain was screaming, "You earned this crash." That's the lie. That's the real danger of challenge culture. You treat discipline like a sprint, not a baseline. You think once you cross the finish line, you've fundamentally changed. You haven't. But here is what nobody ever tells you about the prison mode. The real change wasn't in the actions. It was in the speed of recovery. Before the 30 days, a slip-up on a Monday meant I was completely screwed until the following Monday. My brain would use that pizza or that skipped gym session as proof that I was inherently lazy and the whole system would collapse. That's the shame spiral, right? After the 30 days, day 32 happened. I woke up, felt like garbage, felt the immediate pull to just keep binging garbage, and I said, no, and that was it. It wasn't a heroic moment of overcoming adversity with grit. It was just a small, almost bored no. The mental machinery, the identity I had built, was slightly, permanently shifted. The effort required to get back on track was a 4 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10. That's the secret. The goal of this kind of intense reset is not to become a perfect monk. The goal is to make the cost of relapse so high that your brain chooses the difficult, uncomfortable task just to avoid the hassle of the internal shame spiral. What prison mode really did was teach me to tolerate boredom. That's the climax, folks. It taught me that discomfort is temporary, and that my brain's need for immediate gratification is actually just an ancient wine. If you can sit through the uncomfortable middle, the 10 minutes of boredom, the 30 minutes of resistance without grabbing the phone or the sugary thing, you win the day. And winning the day is the only thing that matters. I still have bad weeks, I still have 0 days. But now they rarely turn into 0 months. That's the actual transformation. It's boring. It's not cinematic. It's just showing up when you don't feel like it, knowing that the cost of quitting is higher than the cost of enduring. If you're sitting there in day 0 hell, stuck on that spiral, and you need a reminder that breaking free is less about a massive personality shift and more about tolerating some mild internal annoyance, then maybe stick around. That's exactly what we talk about here.